everyone, I'm Paige and welcome back to my channel. It is officially August, and although it's been a minute since I've hopped on here, it is time for my July reading wrap up and my August TBR. I read a total of 9 books. One of them was technically a lecture that I listened to, but I'm going to count it as a book type thing because it was really interesting and I still want to share it with you. I found that one on Libby, and that is actually the first one I am going to be talking about. So coming in at number 9 is The Great Pharaohs of Ancient Egypt by Brier. He is a professor of philosophy at a university in New Jersey, and this is part of the Great Lecture series that my library subscribes to through Libby. I believe a lot of libraries subscribe to it, and it was really cool and interesting to kind of listen to this. However, I will note that some of the historiography around this has already changed since this lecture was recorded and presented. They have found some other things in the Valley of the Kings and a couple other things that have been coming out in the past couple of years that kind of make some of the inferences he makes a little bit more incorrect. A lot of the facts that he states is not, and there's always going to be a little bit of bias on what he believes versus what other Egyptologists believe, but it was really fascinating to listen to. There are a total of 6 lectures, and each of them are about 45 minutes long, so you can listen to them fairly easily in bite-sized pieces. Number 8 is also an audiobook that I listened to. I actually found this one as one of the other choices for a book box, and that is Camp Zero by Michelle Min Sterling. This one it's set in the future, not far off future, but probably about 30-ish years, and kind of talks about how the climate has changed so drastically that where we are living in America now has become basically uninhabitable. So all of these people move further northward, and a lot of them are moving up into the upper levels of Canada, into those colder climates in order to survive. And it follows 3 different points of view, and they kind of all converge towards the end. I really like it. I like multiple points of views, and I like those differing timelines. It's one of the reasons why I like The Witcher so much, especially the first like 2 books that are more of prequels, and then also the first season of the show. I like those timelines that are completely separate but then all tied together in very nicely. Then coming in at number 7 is The Stars We Steal by Alexa Donne. This is a Persuasion retelling. I really enjoyed it. I think Persuasion is one of the more underrated Jane Austen novels. I like it probably almost as much as I like Pride and Prejudice, and Pride and Prejudice is like a very comforting thing to me. I fell in love with it when I was in high school, and it just, yeah. So that was my first experience with Jane Austen, but then Persuasion was next, and The Stars We Steal, it was really good, and the only reason why I did not rank higher is just because some of the books I read, could not put down. So I will also say this month I read a lot for escapism. I had a lot going on with my work and my class. I was taking a project management class, and July was the last month. I just submitted my final at the end of July, so it was 4 assignments in those 4.5 weeks, and it was a lot. So that's why I kind of stepped away from YouTube, because priorities. And when I read something that would just take me away for a little bit, relax me, kind of a mental health break. So those are important, and The Stars We Steal definitely helped with that. Okay, next we have another book that I said I was going to read in July, and I did. It was the first book that I actually finished in July, and that is Jane in Love by Rachel Givney. I told you we were going with a Jane Austen theme this month, and we definitely did. This one is about Jane time traveling into present day Bath, where the main love interest is he's in disbelief the entire time that she is actually Jane Austen, which, I mean, if I was living in 2023 and Jane Austen randomly appeared in my flat, I would too. So it follows Jane Austen, it follows an actress, and the love interest, who is the actress's brother, are the main three characters. So it was really cool to see how that friendship and that love interest tied together, and as well as the sibling dynamic. So I really enjoyed it. Parts of it were definitely page turners, other parts were a little but sometimes books are just that way, but definitely a good romance, a good escapism romance. So like I said, Jane in Love by Rachel Givney. Ranking in at number 6 was another audiobook. This kind of fed into that ancient Egypt kind of obsession that I've been having. I watched all of the Lost Treasures of Ancient Egypt on Disney Plus. I listened to that lecture series, and I also listened to this book called When Women Ruled the World: 6 Queens of Ancient Egypt by Lara Cooney. And this was tracking through the different dynasties. So over this multi-thousand year period, she looked at 6 different queens and how they were able to get power, maintain power, what their relationships were to with the males of their family, if they had relationships with specific males, and all of that. So the only part I didn't absolutely love about it, and this is more of a fact of history than it is anything else, is that these women did have to have these male connections. She kind of, in an inadvertently way, makes it sound like these women were able to grab power just for the sake of themselves. But the evidence that she presents in the women that she did it with, all of them had brothers, sons, husbands, somebody who was the king of ancient Egypt. So the only one that kind of took that power away and was able to maintain it separate from the males in her family was a little bit Cleopatra. But even then, if you really think about it, after her brother Ptolemy died, she still had her younger brother that she ended up getting married to, and she ruled independently of him. It seems like he didn't really do a whole lot. I could be wrong. I am not an expert in ancient Egypt. But then even then, she was ruling with the expectation that her son was going to succeed her, and it made it seem more like a regency than her being queen. But she did make that distinction of, I am Isis, I am queen, I am a god. So I really liked that book. It was a very nice feminist perspective on ancient Egypt, especially because so many of these women, there's so little known about them because a lot of the men who came after them wiped away a lot of their history. As we are seeing Nefertiti, her tomb may be behind King Tut's, and nobody knows, because his tomb is seen as seen to need to be preserved, so they don't want to damage it in order to see if there's actually another chamber behind one of the walls where they think there might be, and so nobody wants to take that risk. I mean, I wouldn't either. That tomb is one of the best preserved tombs in the Valley of the Kings because it was undiscovered for so long. So but I would definitely give that book a look if you are interested in easier history reads or listens. She makes it very easy to understand what was going on, and she breaks it down to the level so then that way the average person can understand what is going on in ancient Egypt at the time of each individual queen. So like I said, When Women Ruled the World by Lara Cooney. Next, we have Fairy Tale by Stephen King. This is when it was the first audiobook I finished this month, and I really enjoyed it. There are parts of it that definitely you can tell it was Stephen King, and Stephen King shone through, but other parts, anytime you hear about Stephen King, you think horror and you think like gruesome yuckiness, and there was only one or two places in there that I really thought had it. It's not really scary. There's some parts that are a little bit suspenseful, and it's more of a, oh, what's gonna happen? I'm on the edge of my seat. But I thought it was a very good book. It was about 24 hours long to listen to. I listened to it at a little bit faster speed. It was less than 1.25 because I listen to it while I walk, so I can't 100% be so focused on the book that I'm missing the things that are going on around me. So listening at like 1.1 or something like that usually works well for me. But I really enjoyed this book. The characters were really dynamic. If you haven't read it yet, I would highly suggest it. This is probably a good Stephen King novel to kind of jump into. It's a little bit longer. If you haven't read any of his other books, Carrie was also good one to get your feet wet with because it is shorter, but his writing style is very much the same. It's become a tiny bit more refined, just the difference between his first book and whatever number book Fairy Tale is for him. So, yeah. Okay, two of the books on this list are rereads. Like I said, I was reading for escapism, so I picked up a book that I knew I absolutely enjoyed and loved and would be able to just sit down and get lost in. And I also have the sequel. The third book does not come out until this fall, but I can guarantee you once it does, I will be picking it up because I love this author. She is a fantastic YA fantasy author, and that is Stephanie Garber. And that book was The Ballad of Never After. If you haven't read these and you've read Caraval and you enjoy Caraval, it's set in the same world. The only reason this ranks as number 3 and not number 2 on the list is because parts of this book seem a little repetitive, or it seems repetitive of the Caraval series. And there's nothing wrong with that. If it works, it works, and she was writing commercially, so it needs to fit a commercial audience, and this book does. I love the cover, by the way. I really enjoyed the covers. And I also really like these covers as well. So I'm really excited for the next book. I think the will they won't they romance kind of is what draws me in, because there are parts that are just super sweet and other parts where Jax is a complete butt. So yeah, The Ballad of Never After. Okay, coming in at number 2 we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I really enjoyed it. I love dragons. I love it when dragons aren't the bad guys. It's kind of like a slightly better version of Aragon, in my opinion. I don't love Christopher Poloni's writing style, and part of the problem is that Aragon, he was published when he was 17. Unpopular opinion, I know. But I thought that this was fast-paced. There was enough slowdown. The only reason I think that it was number 2 instead of number 1 is that romance between the two main characters, you see it building, and then all of a sudden, snap, it's there. And I don't know, I just felt like it didn't 100% match Xaden's character, but that could just be my perspective of him. Other people love this book, obviously. It ran out of its first print run, so I had gotten it with the second print run, and I already pre-ordered the next book. So I enjoyed it. I think that it is a fantastically written fantasy. It has that dark academia type vibe to it, but set in a fantasy realm. I I can definitely see this influencing YA new adult fiction in the future. Okay, my number one book. This is the first book, Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I had first gotten this book right around the same time I got my dog, and she had a nice little field day with it right after I first got her. So she was a little stressed and she just took a little nibble out of it, but it's a signed first edition, so that's why I wanted to keep it and not get a new one, because there are other books that she also had taken a nibble on when she was still a puppy, and I just went ahead and bought new copies of those if I liked them enough. This book is a comfort read. I like how independent Evangeline is, and she doesn't really need Jax, and she wants to be loved. She's independent, but she wants to be loved, and I identify a lot with that type of character. And the romance is kind of there in the first book, but not as much as in the second. It's more of trying to figure out what Jax wants, what's going on, why is she in this different and strange place. So I feel like there's a lot of depth to this book that I don't necessarily see in other YA fiction, and I breeze through these. I read them in a couple of hours, and I've read this one 3 times, and each time it's just drawn me in. And I'm definitely one of those people, I like to reread books. I read something and I can remember the broad strokes of it, but most of the time I can't remember the finite details. So going back and rereading them, I absolutely adore. So those were the 9 books that I read in July. Next up, I'm going to have my August TBR, and I am going to keep this short and sweet. I'm not going to show you the books or anything like that, because this video is already getting a little long, and I don't want to keep you guys super duper long. Okay, so my August TBR is only going to have 5 books on it. I will obviously probably pick up at least one, and I probably won't finish all 5. So the first one I have is Firelight by Sophie Jordan. This is very similar to the Talon book by Julie Kay, that also wrote the Iron King series, where it's a dragon-like creature and a hunter kind of fall in love. It's definitely a younger YA book, and it's set in a high school, so it has all of those like original tropes and stuff, and it's a little dated, but it's gonna be a fun read. Like I said, reading for escapism. I am done with class until the end of September, when the next one starts up again, and I am taking full advantage of that. Bless you. Okay, the second one is the one of the books I didn't 100% get to last month, and I am currently reading it. It is The Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Torzs, and this is the book of the month for, I think, June. So I am going to read that this month and finish it up. I'm probably about a quarter of the way through. I just haven't had a ton of time to sit down and read it yet. I picked it up a little bit later in July, so yeah. Right. Number 3 is the audiobook I am currently listening to, and that is Glass Houses by Louise Penny. This is number 14 in the Inspector Gamache series. So I will say, if you guys have any other series that are very similar to this, let me know down below in the comments, because I am almost out of Louise Penny books, and I'm going to be so sad when I am. Hey everyone, editing page here. My last couple minutes of the clip got deleted for some reason. When I was recording, my camera had the auto shut off that happened, so it turned off and then the clip got corrupted. I managed to import it once, but then something happened and I had to try to re-import it, and it didn't work. So I'm going to just quickly go over the last 3 books and wrap up this video for you. So number 4 that I am planning on reading in August is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I read A River Enchanted last year and I loved it. So I am going to read the next one again. I am sorry, that is my dog whining, and now you see her back there. And then number 5 is Lightbringer by Claire Legrand. This is the last book in her Furyborn trilogy, and I just haven't gotten to it yet, so I'm going to sit down and actually read it. It's probably the longest one, 550-ish pages, so long, but not Sarah J. Maas long. Yeah, so those are the 5 books that I'm going to be reading in August. If you guys could just comment down below, let me know what you're reading. I would love some more book recommendations. Like I said, I am almost done with the Louise Penny series, so I'm going to need some more soon. And don't forget, if you like this video and you want to see more content, be sure to like and subscribe.